There's a quiet lie sitting at the center of modern retirement advice. It doesn't scream, it doesn't look dangerous. In fact, it often comes dressed as guidance, responsible, even helpful. It tells smart people to chase one giant number, stare at account balances, and assume that if the pile looks big enough, the future will take care of itself. But that lie is exactly why some very smart retirees still go broke. Not careless people, not reckless spenders, not people who never planned. I'm talking about people who worked hard, saved steadily, read the articles, maxed out the plans, and still found themselves slowly squeezed in retirement by forces they did not fully respect. Here's the thing, going broke in retirement usually doesn't happen in one loud disaster. It happens quietly. A little more spending here, a market drop there, a Social Security decision made too fast. A pension that looked small but was actually huge. Inflation that creeps. Health costs that nudge. Fear that silently changes the way you draw money. And that is why this conversation matters so much. Because the real question isn't how smart you are. It isn't whether you worked hard enough. It isn't even whether you saved more than your neighbors. The real question is whether your income can hold up your life when your paycheck disappears. Think of retirement like a house. Your income floor is the foundation under that house. Strong, underground, easy to ignore, but holding everything up. Your savings are more like the furniture. Nice furniture matters. Of course it does. But if the foundation is weak, it doesn't matter how expensive the couch is. The whole house feels unstable. Most people are taught to obsess over the furniture. Get a bigger sofa, add a better table, upgrade the rug. In retirement language, that means grow the account, grow the account, grow the account. And meanwhile, almost nobody stops to ask whether the foundation under everything is strong enough to carry the weight of real life. That is the trap. Smart retirees often go broke not because they failed to build savings, but because they misunderstood what those savings were supposed to do. Savings are not the plan by themselves. Savings are support, flexibility, backup, cushion. But when you force savings to do the job that reliable income should have done, the strain starts showing fast. Now let me show you what I mean with two people. Patricia is 67. She spent most of her career as a public school office assistant. She lives in a small paid-off house. Her savings are just under $200,000. If you looked only at that number, a lot of people would say she is behind, maybe even dangerously behind. Ruth is 65. She worked as a regional sales manager. She has about $940,000 in retirement accounts. She lives in a nice condo, still has a mortgage, drives a newer SUV, and by most outside measures looks far more prepared. If you asked a room full of people who is safer, almost everyone would point to Ruth. Patricia wakes up much calmer. She spends with less guilt. She does not stare at market headlines over breakfast. She still watches her money, of course. She is not careless, but she knows what is coming in each month. She knows what is already covered. She knows what can bend and what cannot. That clarity changes everything. Ruth, on the other hand, checks her balances all the time. She worries about every dip. She keeps asking herself whether she should spend less, work longer, delay travel, cancel plans, and hold back just a little more. She has more money on paper, but less certainty in her day-to-day life. And that feeling matters more than most people realize. It's not about who has more saved. It's about who has more certainty. Patricia has a modest pension. She also waited until full retirement age to claim Social Security. Between those two checks, a big share of her basic life is covered before she touches a dollar of savings. Her property taxes, groceries, utilities, insurance, and routine life costs are mostly handled by money that keeps showing up no matter what the stock market does. Ruth has no pension. Most of her plan depends on drawing from investments. She is smart enough to know that money invested in stocks and bonds can grow, but it can also fall at the exact moment she needs it most. So every time she spends, part of her brain wonders whether she is hurting the future. That invisible stress is heavier than it looks. The real question isn't how much do I have, it's how much of my life is already paid for by dependable income. Let that sink in. Because once you see retirement through that lens, a lot of old advice starts to look incomplete, not useless, just incomplete. $1 million means something very different to a person with a pension and strong Social Security than it does to someone with no guaranteed income at all. Same number, different reality, and the opposite is also true. $200,000 can mean disaster in one household and peace in another. It all depends on what that money is being asked to do. Is it covering a small gap, or is it carrying the whole house on its back? That difference quietly decides whether retirement feels stable or shaky. A lot of that feeling comes from the giant number myth. The idea that retirement safety starts at $1 million, or $1.5 million, or $2 million, and anything below, that means you failed. That idea has scared an entire generation, and for many people, it is built on assumptions that do not match their actual lives. Now listen, I am not saying savings do not matter. They absolutely matter. I want you to build as much as you reasonably can. I want you to reduce stress, create flexibility, and protect yourself from surprises. But if you focus only on the size of the pile, you can miss the structure of the plan. And structure is what keeps people safe. This is where Social Security timing enters the picture. Most people treat claiming age like a side detail. It isn't. It is one of the biggest retirement decisions you will ever make. Claim at 62 and you get a smaller monthly benefit for life. Wait until full retirement age and it grows. Wait until 70 and it grows even more. Think of Social Security like a faucet connected to a pipe you spent your working life filling. Every paycheck, every payroll tax, every year of work built pressure in that pipe. When you turn on the faucet, changes how much water comes out each month. Turn it on early and the flow starts sooner, but the stream is smaller. Wait longer and the stream gets stronger. And if you wait too long to turn it on, some of that water never reaches you. It just stays in the pipe, unused, gone, no refunds, no second chances. That is why there is no perfect age for everyone. The question isn't what's the best age, it's what's the best decision for your life right now. Health matters, work matters, marriage matters, other income matters, longevity in your family matters. If you are in poor health and need the money now, claiming earlier may make sense. If you are healthy, still working, or want stronger lifelong income, waiting may be smarter. The point is not to follow a rule. The point is to understand the trade-off. And for married couples, this gets even more important. Because Social Security is not only about your own benefit, it is also about survivor income. When one spouse dies, one of those checks usually disappears. The household drops from 2 benefits to 1, and the surviving spouse often keeps most of the bills. That shock can quietly wreck a plan. If the higher earner delays Social Security, the surviving spouse may inherit a larger benefit later. That one decision can protect the person left behind. A lot of couples never slow down enough to see that. They focus on getting money early, not realizing they may be locking in less protection for the person who could live alone for 10 or 15 years. That dynamic matters because confidence changes behavior. People with stronger income floors tend to make steadier decisions. They panic less. They sell less in down markets. They enjoy their retirement more. They still need a plan, yes, but they do not feel like every expense is a tiny act of sabotage against their own future. Patricia's pension is only $1,100 a month. Not glamorous, not exciting, easy to dismiss. But when you combine that with Social Security, her monthly base income is strong enough to cover most of her needs. Her savings are not the engine. They are the helper. They are there for travel, repairs, gifts, and the occasional surprise. That is a powerful position. Ruth looks richer because her account balance is bigger. But her account has a harder job. It has to help pay the mortgage. It has to bridge the gap before full Social Security. It has to absorb market swings. It has to fund travel, insurance, car replacement, and maybe future care. Her pile is bigger, but it is carrying more weight. This is why smart retirees sometimes go broke. They build a large pile, then underestimate the job they gave that pile. Yet because pensions arrive as monthly checks, many people still mentally shrink them. They respect account balances more than income streams. That is a mistake. Real retirement security is not just about what you own. It is about what shows up every single month without you having to sell anything to create it. Those are two very different kinds of wealth. Perceived data says, I almost have $1 million, I should feel amazing. Real data says, my spending is high, my fixed costs are stubborn, my mortgage is still here, and one bad market stretch could force ugly choices. Same world, different truth. And retirement punishes people who cling to the perception and ignore the math. That line between need and want is where a lot of plans quietly break. Not because wants are bad. You should have wants. You should enjoy your life. The goal isn't just to survive retirement. The goal is to enjoy it. But if you never separate must-have spending from nice-to-have spending, then every market drop feels like a personal crisis. I want you to imagine your retirement in 2 parts. Not one giant number, but 2 distinct piles. Pile 1 is income that shows up no matter what. Social Security, pension, maybe a simple annuity. Pile 2 is savings. That second pile gives you options, but the first pile gives you sleep. And sleep is not a small thing in retirement. When smart retirees ignore that distinction, they often spend from pile 2 as if it were pile 1. They assume withdrawals will always behave like a paycheck. But withdrawals are not paychecks. They depend on timing. They depend on markets. They depend on how much you take out and when. That uncertainty can quietly erode even a disciplined plan. This is where sequence of returns risk shows up. That term sounds technical, but the idea is simple. If the market falls hard in the first few years after you retire and you are pulling money out at the same time, the damage can be much worse than if those same bad years came later. Early losses hit harder because the account has less time to recover. Ruth retired into a shaky market, nothing catastrophic, just enough turbulence to make her uneasy. So she kept withdrawing, but she also started pulling back emotionally. She delayed visits with grandkids, put off a trip she had dreamed about, said no to replacing an aging car. Her money did not vanish overnight. Her confidence did, and that changed her whole retirement. Patricia had a different experience. Because her base income covered most essentials, she could leave her savings alone during bad stretches. She did not need to sell as much when prices were down. She had time, and time is one of the greatest gifts dependable income can give you. It lets your other money breathe, instead of forcing it to perform on command. This conversation is uncomfortable, but avoiding it is expensive. When one spouse dies, many households lose one Social Security check, maybe lose part of a pension, and often still face nearly the same housing, tax, insurance, and utility costs. The emotional loss is huge, but the income loss can be huge too. Plans that look solid for two people can crack for one. A lot of smart retirees plan only for the happy path. Both people alive, markets behave, health mostly holds, spending stays reasonable, but retirement does not grade you on your best years. It grades you on the hard years. Widowhood, illness, inflation, repairs, adult children needing help, a car replacement at the wrong time. Those are the moments that expose weak foundations. And speaking of inflation, let me give you a picture you will remember. Inflation is like an ice cube in the sun. It doesn't melt all at once. It creeps, it nudges, it slowly changes shape until what used to feel solid feels smaller in your hand. Groceries cost a little more. Insurance rises. Home repairs cost more. Healthcare keeps inching upward. People often say my house is paid off, so my expenses will be low. Maybe, maybe not. A paid-off house still needs taxes, insurance, upkeep, appliances, plumbing, roofs, and sometimes accessibility changes later in life. A paid-off house removes one bill. It does not remove the reality that life still charges rent in other ways. Same with healthcare. A lot of people build a retirement budget around routine spending, then get blindsided by premiums, deductibles, dental work, hearing aids, prescriptions, or the simple fact that you may need more help as you age. None of this is rare. None of it is dramatic. It just quietly stacks, month after month, year after year. This is why expense underestimation is so dangerous. It is not one giant mistake. It is 100 small misses. A streaming service here, a family loan there, higher car insurance, more gifts for grandkids, helping with a wedding, covering a grown child's rough patch, ordering out more than you expected. None of it seems fatal. Together, it can be. Not your estimated nest egg, not your hoped-for return, not the best-case chart from 10 years ago. Your actual monthly income, after taxes, after Medicare premiums, after insurance, after any debt payments, after the real-world bills that show up whether you feel optimistic or not. That number tells the truth more clearly than almost anything else. And while we are here, we need to talk about cost of living adjustments, the little increases that can matter a lot over time. Social Security has them. Not perfectly, and not always enough for every household, but it does have them. That means your benefit has at least some built-in response to rising prices. Over a long retirement, that is meaningful. Many pensions do not have that feature. Some do, many do not. So a pension that feels solid at 65 may feel tighter at 75 and much tighter at 85. That does not make the pension bad. Far from it. It just means you need to understand what it can and cannot do. A fixed check in a rising cost world slowly buys less. This is another place smart people trip. They see guaranteed income and assume the problem is solved forever. But if that income has no adjustment for inflation, you still need a plan for the gap that grows over time. That is where savings, delayed Social Security, part-time work, or lower fixed costs can make a big difference. Again, structure matters. Here is something else that catches people off guard. Taxes do not retire just because you do. If most of your money sits in tax-deferred accounts, every withdrawal may create taxable income. That may not ruin you, but it can surprise you. And surprise is expensive. Smart retirees who never practice living on real after-tax income can end up drawing more than expected. I think a lot of people are measuring it wrong. Not all. Some truly are underprepared, and pretending otherwise helps no one. But many others are standing on stronger ground than they realize because they have dependable income, low fixed costs, or a spouse with benefits that are not being properly valued. They feel poor on paper while living relatively stable lives. And on the flip side, some people look terrific on paper and are quietly fragile. They carry debt into retirement, They have high fixed costs. They help everyone around them. They depend on markets for basic bills. They claim Social Security early without thinking through survivor needs. They underestimate inflation. They assume smart investing will solve what is really an income design problem. Retirement is not just an accumulation challenge. It is a distribution challenge. It is about how money moves through your life once work stops. It is about order, timing, reliability, and pressure. A beautiful savings number can still fail if the drawdown strategy is weak. A modest savings number can still succeed if the income structure is strong and spending is realistic. Now listen carefully. The people who do best in retirement are not always the ones who guessed the market right. Often, they are the ones who reduced the number of things that could go wrong at the same time. They entered retirement with fewer fixed costs. They understood their benefits. They planned for one spouse surviving the other. They left themselves room. That room matters because life is messy. A broken furnace does not care what the S&P 500 did that quarter. A health setback does not wait for bond yields to improve. Your roof does not hold off because you promised yourself next year would be easier. Retirement plans need margin, not perfect math. Margin, space, breathing room, options. This is also why working even 1 or 2 extra years can matter more than people think. It is not just about saving more. It is about shortening the number of years your savings must support you. It can mean a larger Social Security benefit, more time for investments to grow, less time drawing them down. Sometimes 1 extra year fixes several problems at once. But again, there is no universal rule. Some people should absolutely retire earlier. Health, caregiving, burnout, job loss, life happens. I am not here to tell you to grind yourself into the ground chasing a perfect retirement date. I am here to help you see the trade-offs clearly, so you make a choice instead of drifting into one. Because deep down, a lot of retirement stress is really certainty stress. It is not just that you want a bigger number. You want to know the bills are covered. You want to know a down market will not wreck your plans. You want to know your spouse will be okay. You want to know that spending on a dinner out does not mean stealing from your 84-year-old self. Not everybody, of course, but many people have more stability than they think because they are looking in the wrong place. They are staring at balances and ignoring income streams. They are comparing themselves to headlines instead of comparing income to expenses. They are measuring against fantasy lifestyles instead of the life they actually want to live. That does not mean feelings over facts. It means feelings are often a signal. If you feel chronically uncertain, there may be a reason. Maybe your plan is too exposed to market timing. Maybe your fixed costs are too high. Maybe you claimed benefits early without modeling the later years. Maybe you never accounted for widowhood, inflation, or rising health expenses. And if you feel surprisingly calm, that may also reflect something real. Maybe your essentials are covered. Maybe your house is paid off. Maybe your pension and Social Security create a strong base. Maybe your spending is naturally modest. Peace is not proof that everything is perfect. But neither is anxiety proof that you are doomed. Both deserve a closer look. First, they stop asking only how much they have and start asking what their money has been hired to do. If the job description is too big, the risk is too big. If your portfolio is expected to provide your groceries, housing, healthcare, travel, emergencies, gifts, and rising future costs, all while weathering market swings, that is a heavy job. Second, they separate needs from wants with brutal honesty. Not to make life small, to make it stable. What must be covered no matter what? Housing, food, utilities, insurance, basic transportation, core medical needs. That list deserves dependable income as much as possible. Wants matter too. Travel, hobbies, generous gifts, but those can flex when needed. Third, they treat Social Security claiming like a major planning decision, not a guess. They look at age 62, full retirement age, and 70. They ask what happens to lifetime income. They ask what happens if one spouse dies first. They ask whether working longer meaningfully strengthens the household. They do not just grab the check because waiting feels hard. Fourth, they stress test the first 5 years of retirement. What if the market drops early? What if inflation stays stubborn for a while? What if a big expense hits in year 2? If your plan can survive an ugly start, it is much stronger than a plan that works only in smooth conditions. Strong plans do not require ideal weather. Fifth, they plan for the silent eroders. Inflation, healthcare, home maintenance, taxes, family support. These are not exotic risks. They are ordinary risks. And ordinary risks are the ones that quietly drain ordinary people. A lot of people do, and I understand that. But avoiding the numbers does not protect you. It only protects the fear. Clarity is kinder than dread, always, even if the answer is not what you hoped. Because once you see the real shape of your plan, you can adjust, delay a little, spend a little less, Claim differently, downsize, refinance, simplify. Remember Patricia and Ruth. Their stories are not fixed forever. Ruth is not destined for failure. Patricia is not automatically safe forever. But the lesson is clear. Security is not the same as appearance. Ruth can improve her future by reducing fixed costs, revisiting claiming choices, creating more guaranteed income, and setting a more realistic spending floor. Patricia still needs to watch inflation and future care. And if you are still working, this message may matter even more, because the biggest improvements are often available before retirement starts. Paying off debt, delaying Social Security when it makes sense, understanding your pension options, building cash reserves, practicing your retirement budget now, talking honestly with your spouse. None of that is flashy. All of it is powerful. Let that sink in. Because retirement failure rarely comes from one dramatic mistake. More often, it comes from a long chain of smaller misunderstandings. Misreading what benefits are worth, overestimating safe withdrawals, underestimating expenses, ignoring survivor risk, confusing asset size with income strength, hoping investment growth will solve spending problems that design should have solved first. You do not need perfection to have a successful retirement. You need clarity. You need to know which bills are fixed, which can bend, which income is guaranteed, which depends on markets, and which decisions still deserve a second look. That knowledge creates freedom, not because it removes every risk, but because it turns vague fear into specific choices. Maybe your next move is to calculate what your pension is really worth. Maybe it is to compare claiming Social Security at 62, 67, and 70. Maybe it is to map out what happens if one spouse is left alone. Maybe it is to practice living on your expected retirement income for 3 months while you are still working. That exercise alone can wake people up. Maybe your next move is smaller, canceling expenses you no longer care about, replacing a car payment with cash savings, moving from a house that feels like a symbol into one that feels like freedom. None of those choices are failures. Sometimes the smartest financial decision is the one that makes your life less impressive and more stable. Freedom might mean a bigger portfolio for you. Fine. Then chase it wisely. But freedom might also mean lower costs, delayed benefits, no debt, a smaller house, a paid-off car, and a budget that actually fits your life. There is more than one way to build a strong retirement, but every strong version shares one thing: the numbers line up with reality. Why do smart retirees still go broke? Because intelligence does not cancel bad framing, because discipline does not protect you from the wrong question, because a large balance can hide a weak design, because confidence built only on savings can crack when markets, health, and time start pressing back, because retirement rewards stability more than appearances. Think about this. There are people with millions of dollars who don't feel secure, and there are people with modest savings who sleep soundly every night. The difference isn't the number. The difference is understanding. Understanding your income, understanding your expenses, understanding what actually matters. That's the difference between stress and peace.